At times I've felt forgotten by God. In those moments where it's so dark, I just had like so much brokenness from my upbringing and just never really felt loved as a kid, and kind of finding Christ in my 20s and really had a major life change and a life turnaround.
Okay.
And so I spent a lot of years not singing, and this is me kind of returning to what God's always called me to do.
Oh God, I'm desperate, down on my knees, send help from heaven, 'cause that's what I need.
Jamie MacDonald, you are new to us here at K-LOVE. We've been loving your song.
Thank you.
Yes. And I feel like I want to introduce you to everybody at K-LOVE, and I want to like take you to a party and say like, oh, this is Jamie MacDonald, here's her song Desperate.
Yeah.
But I need to know some things about you.
I'm very outdoorsy. I love camping. I love hiking.
Okay.
I think I'm very childlike, and when I get around kids, I just feel myself. And so I'm just one of the kids.
That's nice.
I think part of that is like my childhood, there was like a lot of harder times. And so I think when I get around kids, I feel like I get to relive some of my childhood, which has been really healing.
Well, can we dig in a little bit to maybe part of that story?
The house I grew up in after my dad left and my mom married someone else was no singing in the house. So that was like my whole childhood.
No singing?
No singing in the house.
Why?
Just because
Like we're bad singers?
He loved,
Let's not do it, or?
He really loved my mom, but didn't ever want kids. And so it was kind of like, don't exist, don't make any noise. And so that was something, my whole upbringing was no singing allowed. And it really kind of put like just like a heaviness on my music and my love for music. I think for me, at times I've felt forgotten by God.
What drew you to him at 21 years old?
Well, I was kind of living a really broken life. I had dropped out of high school. So for about 5 years, I was into drugs and alcohol, and I kind of didn't exist. A lot of the people that knew me from the past were just like, whatever happened to Jamie? We never saw her again. So sad. What happened to her? She could have really done something with her life. And I just had like so much brokenness from my upbringing, and just never really felt loved as a kid. And I found like a family in that atmosphere of like drugs, alcohol, gang violence. And I was just like around a lot of scary, dangerous situations. But those people were my family. Yeah. And they took me in and loved me in a lot of ways that my own family couldn't. And so I spent a lot of years, just at the bottom. And I started to cry out to God when I saw some of my friends overdosing. A couple of my friends died. And I had an experience with Jesus at 12 years old at a church camp that kind of always stayed with me. So some of my darkest moments I would think back to at camp when I felt God's love for the first time, and my counselors loved on me. And I gave my life to Jesus at 12. So I guess at 21, it was like a returning to that experience that I had. But I had prayed to God one night. There was like a big party at our house, and people were passed out on the floor. And I was just like, God, if you can get me out of here, like I would love a new start. I'd love to sing for you and live my life for you. And so he actually provided a way out, and I called a friend and found a new place to live. Yeah. And then I just kind of started radically running away from all the things that I was into, and all the drugs and alcohol and even those relationships. And I just got into church and kind of immediately joined missions. Okay. And I went to Africa for a month.
Okay. What country?
Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah, so like my first time praying for somebody, it's like healing the sick, and everything I was reading in the Bible I was doing in real life. And it all went together very naturally. I was just like, okay. And then there they were. And, even just like the spiritual climate there is so intense. Definitely not going to be bored in Kenya on a mission. But I got pushed up to preach when... because I was there for a whole month, and some of the people that lived there were like, well, surely if they send you 2,000 miles across the country or across the world, you must have the word of the Lord. Yeah. And I was like, I really don't, and I don't know the Bible at all. Yeah. And so it kind of just like I didn't say that. I was up on stage and all the energy was like, go, go. And I was like, so I just like started singing this gospel song to get out of preaching. And that was kind of what broke just that kind of long silence of not singing for me. It was just like, well, I got to do it.
That was the moment.
Yeah, that was kind of my breakthrough moment. Everybody had joined in and just like the place kind of erupted. I had this tiny little drum that I bought at the market that morning. It wasn't an instrument. It was like a decorative little African drum. And I like pointed to it before I started singing and to the bishop. I was like, get that. Get up here and play. Because I just didn't want to sing like in midair. Yeah. And he's like, that's not an instrument. I'm like, play it. Yeah. So he was just like playing along. But anyways, it was a big breakthrough moment for me. And from then on, when I got back from Africa, I joined a worship team.
Okay.
There's so much to the story, but my mom remarried a worship leader. So I got to join their worship team. Wow. And that was like a big redemptive part of our story. The body of Christ has really loved on me and brought me in. So every city I've lived, like some family has taken me in and given me keys to their home and just like, you're our daughter and like, you got this and just cheering for me. And so it's like the body of Christ has loved me back to life.
You can't listen to your song Desperate and think that there's not a story behind it. What season of your life or what moment in your story do you think about as you were writing that song or as you've been performing it?
I moved to Nashville in 2019 to pursue music. And I was kind of getting some conversations started with record labels and really kind of ready to pursue music full time. And the pandemic hit. And so I found out that my dad, who I was mostly raised by my mom, so I hadn't seen my dad in many years. I found out that he was nearby in Atlanta and he was at the final stages of Parkinson's and dementia. I ended up packing a bag for a week to go stay with him during the quarantine, which we all thought was a couple weeks long.
Right.
And then a couple weeks turned into a few months, and my dad just needed so much help. And so I ended up moving in and living there for 4 years and becoming like my dad's primary caregiver. And it was really, really tough, but really beautiful. I laid all the music down and just was honestly like making really beautiful memories with my dad, but also like walking him through the last years of his life. So it was just like beautiful and really heart-wrenching at the same time. And my dad and I couldn't always have like regular conversations, but I would play his favorite music, which is like Christian music from the 80s.
Okay.
So we would just put on, I remembered all his favorite songs from when I was a kid. And so he hadn't heard them in maybe 10 years. Like he just was, you know, kind of just off the deep end mentally. So he forgot about his music. And once I started playing the songs, he just like came to life. And it'd be really cool to see like after I played him a song that he remembered every word to, then he would start talking about his life and it would like activate parts of his brain that could remember stuff. And so to me, it was also like awakening the power of music for me again in a new way, where that was kind of how him and I communicated. We would just sing songs together. And that was a big part of me kind of stepping back into music with like a fresh vision and like purpose around it.
We look at those desperate seasons when we think about being desperate. It doesn't feel like the bop of a season. It's the ugly cry. It's the gritty. It's the tough. But there's also beauty in that.
Yeah.
And there's a season in my life where I was so dependent upon God financially as a missionary, and I didn't know how I was going to make ends meet every single month, and it was just this desperate scramble every single time. And I remember saying to my dad, I'm like, I can't wait to move back to America, get my own job, and make my own money. And his comment to me was, Lo, everything that you've learned about God in this season of desperation and dependence, why would you want to leave that? Because there was beauty there and what I got to experience from God when we're desperate and He is everything that we have. And so despite the ugly and the hard, what was something that was beautiful that you got to experience out of the desperation?
I would just say like the connection I was able to make and the healing I got from spending time with my dad.
Yeah.
Because I spent my whole life without a dad. And so I think before I was able to step into my music calling, I like needed to come to terms with some of the childhood wounds that I had and kind of find peace there. And God's really done a lot in my heart through singing that song.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like every time I sing it, there's like another layer of healing I get. So I'm experiencing it with everybody else in real time.
And you're going to be able to hear people's stories too of how they're experiencing it.
Yeah.
They may not even know your name, but they hear your song.
Yeah.
And they may not know where it came from.
Yeah.
But it's a soundtrack to their story.
Yeah. It's
so
been
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
And it's made me feel less alone. Like when you're going through something super heavy, it's like you almost always feel like you're the only one, and you see other people just like enjoying life, and you're like, I'm really struggling. But like sharing Desperate and hearing everybody's comments and everyone's like really opening up.
Yeah.
Like suddenly I don't feel so alone in what I'm going through. And it's like suddenly this like superpower, like we're all doing this together. And
when I think about as a DJ or I think about connecting with people, there's this quote that's one of my favorites from C.S. Lewis. And I think about you and your songs. The quote is, "The moment of friendship begins when one person turns to the other and says, 'You too? I thought I was the only one.'"
yeah, that's beautiful.
And so your songs are letting people know with your vulnerability and what you have walked through. And I'm sure that more of your story will be unveiled in all of your music.
Yeah.
That you're letting people know you're not the only one.
Right.
You're not alone. Beyond Jamie being with you, to be able to be an encouragement, God is with you.
Yeah.
And so keep bringing us incredible music as you are following Jesus. We're excited for it.
Thank you, Lauree.
Yeah.